You don't hear the fire until the wind changes. At first it's just a smell, distant pine sap, boiling, tar hissing. Then the sound comes low, like a drum, muffled by earth. Then louder, closer. You run. Holding your son against your chest, you race past laundry lines and barrels, past men who shout in Cantonese and English, neither fast enough to stop what's coming. You don't scream. You don't have time to. Behind you, the ridge glows red. Not sunrise, not salvation, just smoke, rising like a god, angry at everything built by hand. The bunkhouse is already collapsing when you reach it. Flames lick the roof. Your husband's coat still hangs by the doorway. You lunge, snatch it before the frame groans and folds like wet paper. Inside, nothing else remains. The wooden comb he carved you last year, gone. The bamboo teacup you brought from Guangdong, ash. You cough, back away. Your son buries his face in your neck and says your name. Not Mama, your name. Later you sit on the dirt. The other women gather, eyes wide and ringing with grief. 2 men are missing. One is yours. The other, his bunkmate, a gambler with no kin. No one says your husband's name. That's the rule here. No name means no curse. No name means no hope lost. But you know better. You feel it. He didn't die in the fire. He disappeared before it. You walk to the edge of Auburn Ridge that night. The stars flicker like uncertain promises. Your son sleeps curled against your hip, his hand still holding the hem of your sleeve. You hum an old song, the one your mother sang the day you left Canton. A lullaby about cranes who never return, but always leave behind a single white feather. You never saw a feather, but the ground feels empty where he used to stand. Like the dirt itself forgot how to hold his weight. When morning comes, you do not search the ashes, you search the spaces. The coat he left behind has something in the lining, a folded receipt. It's for rice and pork belly, dated 2 days after he was last seen. But the storekeeper says he never saw him. Just a boy who came to collect it, said his father sent him. But your son? He's never been to the store alone. You ask again. The man shakes his head. Maybe he had another son. That night, your son whispers something in his sleep. One word. You lean closer. It's a name you don't recognize, but your body tightens anyway, because something in the way he says it feels borrowed, not learned, not taught, just heard. And suddenly you know you weren't the only one he kissed before leaving. You weren't the only name stitched in his prayers. And the fire? It wasn't the end. It was the cover. If stories like this help you breathe easier, you know where to find more. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum and let the story come to you. 3 days after the fire, you return to the rubble, not because you believe anything survived, but because you need to know what didn't. Your son trails behind you, quiet, barefooted, hugging the silk pillowcase that still smells like pine smoke. The bunkhouse is charred down to ribs, its bones brittle, blackened. You don't look for keepsakes, you look for lies. Near the rear wall, what used to be the altar shelf, you find it. A tea bundle wrapped in linen, singed but not burned through. It's his handwriting on the cloth. Your name, just that. Nothing else. You untie it slowly. Inside, 3 oolong leaves, dry as bone, 1 copper coin, a baby's silk shoe, the one your son wore during his naming ceremony in Hangzhou, and a folded square of parchment, empty. No words, only the faint outline of something once pressed there, like it had been copied over something else, then erased. You clutch it all close. The shoe curls in your palm like a memory turned inward. The tea crumbles, but the coin, you recognize the mark. Railroad pay, stamped 5 years earlier. A date before you arrived. A date that doesn't match the story he told you, that he arrived after marrying you. Your mouth goes dry. Your son asks, "Was this Papa's?" You nod, but you don't explain. Not yet. Because some truths can't be spoken before noon. And some mothers wait for moonlight to whisper the parts that stain. Back at the widow's house, she notices the shoe. She doesn't ask. Just brings a basin of warm water and a cloth. You wash your hands, then place the bundle inside a tin box. Your son watches. You label it with a slip of paper, his before ours. He can't read yet, but someday he will, and he'll ask what before really meant. That night, you dream of railway tunnels, not straight ones, twisting, narrow, a voice echoing through them, but not calling your name, calling someone else's. In the morning, your son wakes up saying a word again, the same one as before. But this time he adds another, mountain. You ask where he heard it. He shrugs, points to the coin, then curls up under your shawl. You hold him, stare at the coin's worn ridge, and wonder, what else did he leave behind, waiting to be unearthed? The widow's house smells of vinegar, camphor, and sourdough. 3 rooms, 1 roof that doesn't leak. She calls you May, though you never gave her your name. Just showed up with ash in your hair and a child on your hip. She opened her door with the same hands she'd later use to scrub your clothes. No questions, but plenty of rules. Rule 1, stay indoors before sundown. Rule 2, speak only English when others can hear. Rule 3, never tell them who your husband was. She's not cruel, but she's not gentle either. She calls her porch a line and says, "People out here don't cross it easily." You don't get protection, she told you once, slicing bread. You get tolerated. That's more dangerous. You sweep, you sew, you boil bones for broth that never taste like home. Your son forgets the Hangzhou lullabies, replacing them with the sounds of hammers and church bells. Sometimes he sings a tune you've never taught him. You ask him where it came from. He points to the wall, the one between your room and the widow's parlor. You press your ear there one night and hear her crying. The town only knows you as her helper. You don't correct them, not when they nod and drop coins in the widow's basket for your mending work, not when they compliment how quiet your boy is. You shrink into the role like a second skin, because being seen too clearly here means being blamed. At the market, a white woman drops her eggs. You stoop to help. She jerks her hand back like you lit a match. You don't flinch, just rise. Walk away. Your son says nothing, just holds your pinky with 2 fingers, tighter than before. Later that evening, the widow asks, "Did he ever talk about work?" You shake your head. He said the pay was poor. She nods, then mutters, "Poor men don't leave tea bundles wrapped in silk." You say nothing, but something shifts in the air between you, like recognition, like 2 women finally realizing they've both been married to ghosts. You find it while folding your son's clothes. Hidden deep inside the sleeve of his winter coat, the one too short now, the one he still refuses to give up. It's red silk, sewn shut with black thread. You don't recognize the stitching, not your hand, not the widow's. You cut it open. Inside is a single piece of folded parchment. Your breath hitches when you see the handwriting. His, your husband's. He wrote in Chinese, a formal script, practiced but rushed. The top line bears your son's name, the one you gave him, not the one your husband used when introducing him to others. You run your thumb along the ink. It's smudged at the corners, weathered, but the message is still there. If this reaches you, know I did not mean to leave, but I could not stay without endangering you both. The boy must never speak the name I buried. You read it again and again. That word, buried, it's not grief, it's guilt. You place the letter beside the coin from the tea bundle. The dates match. So do the names. And still, no explanation. Only a secret carried in your son's sleeve like a soft threat wrapped in silk. You ask your boy if he knows who gave him the coat. He frowns, says a name you've never heard, a man's name, then adds, "He smelled like sweet smoke." Your throat tightens. He repeats it, slowly this time. But it's not the man's name that haunts you. It's the way he says it, like a memory isn't his, like he borrowed it, held it, was given it. That night you open the red envelope again, flip it over. There's one final line scratched in lighter ink, almost an afterthought. The ledger will show what my voice could not. You don't sleep, because you don't know whose ledger, but you do know who keeps ledgers in this town. The widow. She's already waiting when you step into the parlor at dawn, sipping tea. A candle lit beside her. She sees the envelope, doesn't ask how you found it, only says, "It's time you saw what I've kept." She rises, walks to the back cabinet, unlocks it with a rusted key you've never seen before. Inside, beneath folded linens and church pamphlets, she lifts out a thick, cloth-wrapped book, sets it gently on the table, unwraps it, and there in neat, narrow script, names, dates, disappearances, Chinese workers, almost all marked with the same word in the margin, gone. She flips to a page near the back, points, your husband's name, no death listed, just a scrawled note beside it. Spoke with foreman, too many questions. You stare at it, your hand shakes. Because he wasn't just lost, he was erased by something bigger than fire, by fear, and now? His voice lives in an envelope sewn shut, in a boy who speaks things he's never heard, and in you. A woman about to light the fuse he buried beneath, silence. You wait until the widow sleeps. The candle stub flickers low in its bowl. Your son curls near the fire, hand still clutching the coin, like it might whisper something more. You lift the ledger again. Trace your husband's name with one finger, and then you reread the note. The ledger will show what my voice could not. But what if the ledger wasn't the only thing? What if it pointed to something? You remember a story he once told, half laughed, half whispered. Back when he still spoke to you at night, he said the old ones used to hide confessions under the altar, pressed between bamboo slats, so that when the gods turned their backs, the truth could still reach their feet. You thought it was poetry. Now it sounds like a map. The railroad bunkhouse is gone, but the altar? It had stood in the back corner, just 3 planks and a brass bowl. The fire blackened it, but didn't destroy the stone base beneath. You return at sunrise, alone. The ashes are cold. The ground still smells like regret. You kneel, brush aside dust and weeds. There. A faint seam between boards, half-hidden, warped. You press. It groans, then pops. Inside, a hollowed pocket in the dirt, and within it, bamboo, split lengthwise, wrapped in oil skin. You lift it. Inside the tube, coiled tightly. 1 page, rice paper, written in the same hand. You unroll it with breath held tight in your throat. It begins, "This is not for mercy. This is for memory." It names names, dates. how the foreman shifted payroll to invisible accounts, how workers who asked too many questions were sent ahead and never returned, how he found out, by accident, how he stayed silent too long, and how they finally told him, "Your son will be safer if you disappear." You sit in the rubble. Let the truth drip into you like blood, not because it heals, because it remembers. You walk home with the scroll hidden inside your blouse. Your son looks up as you enter, asks, "Did you find Papa?" You kneel, hold his face, and say slowly, "Not yet." Because what you found isn't him, it's the world he died inside, and you're not ready to give him that weight, not yet. But you will, because this bamboo tube, this truth, it's not staying buried again, not while you still breathe. The next morning, she's already waiting. You step into the kitchen, bamboo tube pressed to your ribs beneath your shawl, and the widow nods once, like she felt it the moment you opened the floor. She gestures to the table. No bread this time, only the ledger open, a pen laid across its spine like a knife. You place the bamboo tube beside it, unroll the scroll. She reads in silence, eyes narrowing with each line. She doesn't ask how you found it. She asks, "Will you sign your name beneath?" You hesitate. Because signing means you've chosen to step out of the fog, to stand visible. And in this town, visibility is a kind of war. She slides the pen toward you. You take it. Ink smells like iron, like blood. You write Lin May, your real Moff, not May and not Mama, not Helper, just the name your mother whispered into your ear before she placed you on a ship. The widow closes the book. "You've marked it now," she says. Her voice is not soft, but it is kind. Later that day you see it, posted outside the town hall, a reward notice. Missing ledger, railroad property, $100, gold. No name listed, no contact, just the warning. Anyone found concealing evidence will be prosecuted. The widow tears it down that evening, burns it in her stove. "Let them ask questions," she mutters. "We'll have answers." You don't sleep. Your son does. He dreams in words you don't understand, but one phrase repeats, in Mandarin, then in English, then in something in between. He didn't fall in. You wake him, ask what that means. He shrugs, rubs his eyes. Papa didn't fall in, he walked. The phrase echoes like a bell with no hand to stop it. He walked. Into what? Into silence? Into a lie? Or into a place where even your name couldn't follow? You pull the scroll from its wrap again, read it until the ink feels memorized, until the truth sinks into your marrow like salt. And you whisper aloud, just once, just for the walls, "He didn't fall," because the world wants to pretend your men vanished. But you'll show them how they were taken, one line at a time, in ink that never dries. The railroad foreman comes to the widow's porch on a Wednesday. Sun still rising, hat low, boots caked in mud, but his coat's pressed sharp as a blade. He doesn't knock, just stands there, fingers drumming on the brim of his hat. You see him before he sees you. But you don't hide. You step out, apron tied neat, sun balanced on your hip like a shield made of blood and memory. He nods, slow. "You the one they call Lin?" You say nothing. He spits, looks past you, to the window, to the curtain that doesn't move, but is definitely watching. Then back to you. "You got something belongs to us," he says. Not a question, a statement. Like your truth is a sack of stolen flour. Like your husband was a misplaced ledger entry. You ask, "What did he take from you?" He smirks. "Time, trust, gold." He squints. and maybe more. Then he kneels, not to you, to your son. Boy looks smart, he says. Your son frowns. You step between them. The foreman rises, dusts off his knees. You want to be careful, he says. Names have a way of getting buried round here. You say nothing, not until he reaches the gate. Then you call out, he didn't bury the name. The foreman stops, turns halfway. You hold up the coin, the same one from the tea bundle. He buried yours. He flinches, not visibly, but his mouth tightens. Then he tips his hat, all fake politeness, and walks away. That evening, the widow boils water without speaking. You help her. Your hands tremble only once when you place the kettle on the stove. She notices, doesn't comment. Just says, he's not the first to try fear. You nod. But he might be the last. You open the ledger again. There's a page near the back. No names, just numbers, large amounts, dates, all just after paydays. One line reads, transfer to West claim, undocumented. You point to it. Ask the widow, what does this mean? She exhales. That they weren't just disappeared. They were sold. You close the book, kiss your son's forehead, then whisper, we're going to make them remember. He smiles sleepily, says, with gold? You shake your head, no. Then hold the coin to the light. Let it gleam one last time before placing it inside the hollow base of the ledger table. With names. Because names weigh more than any vein of dust beneath a dying mountain. And yours? Yours is just beginning to echo. The town square glows strange tonight. Lanterns hang from iron hooks, swaying in the breeze like soft warning bells. A celebration, they say. New rail laid, more silver hauled from the earth's ribs. You stand at the edge of the crowd, your son's hand curled in yours. The widow silent beside you, then you see it. Hung just above the steps of the town hall, its glass scuffed, base rusted, but unmistakable, your husband's lantern. You'd know the carving anywhere, small, deliberate, pressed into the metal just under the latch. Yong Bu Wang, never forget. You run your finger along the words even now, in memory. He carved it the week your son was born, said it was so light would always find you. You ask the sheriff where it came from. He shrugs. Found in the rubble. No one claimed it. You press him. He laughs, shakes his head. Belongs to the town now. Property of recovery. Like grief has a deed. Like memory is something that can be reassigned. You say, I'd like it back. He smiles tight. Not how this works. Then turns, adjusting the brim of his hat like the conversation never happened. The widow doesn't speak as you walk home, but at the porch she hands you something, wrapped in muslin. You open it. A brass key, old, notched strange. She says, that lantern? It used to hang at the first rail station, before the fire. You look at the key again, it's tagged. A faded paper label reads, Bunk House, Locker 6. You don't wait till morning. You and the widow return to the ruins by lamplight. She keeps watch while you sift through ash and splintered stone. Locker 6 is there, charred but intact. The key fits. Inside, a cloth satchel, and beneath it, a journal, your husband's. The widow exhales sharply. This doesn't belong to the town, she says, and you nod, because it never did. Back at the house, by the quiet fire, you open the journal. First page, your son's name. Second, a line written in English. They told me I could pick gold or blood. He didn't choose either. He chose silence. And now you're ready to break it. The widow sends a runner, a girl no older than 10, quick-footed and coal-eyed, who returns with a midwife's name on her tongue and a location scrawled on a torn recipe card. She says the midwife remembers too much, so you go, with the widow at your side and your son walking between you, one hand in each of yours. The midwife lives in a stone house built against the ridge, where water drips from the eaves like slow confession. She opens the door before you knock. She's older than you expect, but her eyes are sharp, sharp enough to slice through time. She doesn't ask your name. She asks, "What did he leave behind?" You answer, "A child." She nods. "I figured as much." She pours tea, doesn't drink it. Instead, she unrolls a scroll of papers from a flour tin, certificates, receipts. One in particular she taps with her finger. Declaration of intent to marry, April 5th. Your stomach drops. That was 2 days before the fire. The name listed, your husband's. But beside it, in delicate script, a woman you've never met. Not Chinese, not from your province, not you. You trace the ink with your fingertip, then ask, "Was it legal?" The midwife shrugs. "Didn't matter. She lost the baby the next week, went east." She studies your face. "But he signed it. That part's real." Outside, your son chases a beetle through the weeds. The widow sits on the porch, watching without watching. You step outside, clutching the paper. The wind catches its edges like it wants to pull it away. You let it. Let it flutter once, then press it into the folds of your coat. Not to destroy it, but to own it. Back at the house, your son tugs your sleeve. Was Papa going to marry another mama? You kneel, touch his cheek, say, "Some men forget who they promised." He nods, then says, "But I didn't forget." You ask what he means. He walks to the hearth, pulls something from behind the stones, a button, carved with the same characters as the lantern, "Never forget." He says, "He gave me this. Said if I lost everything, I should find this." You press it to your palm. It's warm from his fingers, small enough to be missed by a fire, but too heavy now to ever lose, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about remembrance, and how a son might carry truth better than a man ever could. You don't expect it to happen at dusk, not in the quiet, not after stew, not while the kettle steams gently on the stove and your son plays with marbles carved from river glass. But it does. One word, clear, precise, not in Mandarin, not in English, but a name, her name, the woman from the certificate. You freeze. The widow stops mid-stitch, needle hovering like judgment in the air. You ask softly, "Where did you hear that?" He blinks, shrugs, says, "Papa said it once, in the dark, said she sang." Your throat tightens. The widow leans forward. "And when did he say that?" Your son looks down. "Mama was asleep." He pushes the marbles into a circle, then says, "He said she was safe, but scared." He said her name once, then he cried. You feel the ground shift, not physically, but inside, like something you've been standing on for years just cracked. You ask, "Do you know what she looked like?" He shrugs again. "Like smoke, but she had red on her shoes." The widow catches your eye. Mouths, red shoes. A memory stirs, one you almost buried. That first spring after the wedding, your husband came home with a parcel, shoes, too big for your feet, too red for mourning. You asked where he got them. He didn't answer, just said, "For later." You never wore them, and one day they vanished from the trunk. You thought it was mice or mold, but now? You wonder whose feet they truly belong to. Your son falls asleep, curled on the floor. You wrap him gently in the shawl your mother stitched with the plum blossom thread. Then turn to the widow. What do you think this means? She doesn't answer at first, then says, "It means he told her things he didn't tell you." You nod, swallow hard, then whisper, "But he told me how to survive." She presses her lips together, then offers a quiet line. That boy remembers what men forget. You both sit in silence. The kettle whistles once, then fades. Later you sit by candlelight, sketching the name your son spoke into the margins of the ledger, not to accuse, but to account, for her, for yourself, for every name this town tried to rub away like a chalk line in rain. And next to it, you write another name, your own, in full, in ink that doesn't fade, because stories spoken through children are never imagination. They are echo. And tonight, you've begun to listen. You don't follow the sound, you follow the absence of it. Out past the town, where the pine trees grow tighter and the air smells like moss and gunpowder, there's a place your son once pointed toward. He said, "That's where Papa's voice goes." You thought it a dream, but tonight, with the wind pressing against your shawl and the sky flat with stars, you follow anyway. It takes an hour, longer, maybe. The widow waits behind, says some stories need walking alone. Your son sleeps curled beneath quilts, stitched from the silence of women who never forgot. You carry nothing, only the lantern with your husband's name, relit for the first time. And there, beneath the trees, half covered in pine needles and dirt, you find it, a shrine, built from river stones and bone-bleached driftwood, unfinished. A bowl in the center still holds a single offering, dried plums and a carved figure of Kuan Yin, face weather-worn, hands still outstretched. Beneath the bowl, folded in a paper sleeve, rests something heavier than paper should allow. You kneel, brush away the needles, open it. Inside a letter, his handwriting again, but different this time, hesitant, almost apologetic. "I built this for forgiveness. I did not finish it because I was not ready to be forgiven." You hold the paper tighter. It continues. "You were the only woman who didn't ask for gold or distance, and I repaid you with both." You sit, read it again and again, until the words blur, until you feel more ache than anger. Not because he's forgiven, but because now you understand. He built the shrine not for gods, but to bury the shame he couldn't carry back home. He left you a silence wrapped in wood and incense, and waited, perhaps foolishly, for it to speak on his behalf. You light the lantern, place it beside the bowl. The light flickers, then steadies, and in its glow you whisper, not his name, but your own. Because this isn't about remembering him, it's about remembering you. You add one thing to the shrine, your son's button, the one with Yongbu Wang carved deep, nestled beside the Kuan Yin figure. Now the shrine is no longer unfinished. Now it holds 3 names, his, yours, and the boy who carries both. You return to town with dawn on your heels and new wind in your lungs. And in your hand, the letter, folded once, but not sealed, because you're ready to share it, not to accuse, but to bear witness. The widow helps you translate the letter line by line. You sit by the hearth, the lantern flickering, your son asleep with a ribbon of drool at the corner of his mouth, fingers still curled around his marble pouch. The letter begins like a prayer and ends like a wound, But in between, names, dates. And one line that breaks you. I kept 2 women's hearts in one pocket and still let both fall. The widow sets her tea down slowly. You still want to carry this forward? You nod. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only path left where silence doesn't win. That night, you copy the letter onto clean rice paper not once, but 3 times. One for the church, one for the sheriff, one to keep. Each stroke deliberate, as if your brush were stitching the ache into permanence. The widow provides ink, brushes, wax seals. She even stamps it with her own name beneath yours, so they know it wasn't just one woman. You walk to the church first. Slip the envelope under the chapel door. You don't wait to see who finds it. Truth doesn't need an audience, only a place to land. The next morning, you rise early, walk to the sheriff's office, your son riding on your hip. You place the envelope on his desk without a word. He stares, doesn't touch it, just says, "There's no law against marrying twice." You smile softly, "But there should be one against disappearing." He doesn't argue, just waves you off like smoke. But the envelope stays on the desk, and you know deep in your bones he'll read it, because men like him can't ignore people. But they read paper. At home, the widow places the final copy in her ledger. She wraps the bamboo tube and lantern button in red cloth and knots it tight. "Now they can't say we never warned them," she mutters. You nod, then sit with your son and begin teaching him how to write your name. One brushstroke at a time. He struggles, frowns, then says, "It feels hard." You answer, "So does telling the truth." He smiles, then dips the brush again, because even the smallest hands can carry the weight of memory if given a name to hold. That night, you place the final copy of the letter under your pillow, not for protection, but so you never forget how much forgetting cost. The summons comes wrapped in brown paper, hand-delivered by a boy, too young to understand what he's carrying. You read it in silence. The town council requests your presence. 3 days from now, to clarify recent accusations and protect public interest. The widow snorts when she reads it. Clarify means hush. You nod. You've seen this before, not here, but in stories whispered by widows and laundresses, in alleys behind boarding kitchens, in needle pricks that stitched truths into linings no one could see. You don't panic. Instead, you plan. You gather the papers again, recopy everything on fresh parchment. But this time, you write your own letter, one not from your husband, from you. It begins, "I was not the one who disappeared. I was the one left holding the silence." You write until your fingers cramp, until the air smells of ink and reckoning, until your name feels like armor. You give the letter to the widow. "Only if they don't let me speak." She nods and seals it in wax, presses it to her lips, then tucks it into the folds of her apron. "Let's hope I don't need to use it." The night before the hearing, your son wakes in a sweat, says he saw the lantern again, burning this time. But not alone, he saw another beside it, flickering blue. You ask, "Did it say anything?" He shakes his head, but then whispers, "It didn't need to." You don't sleep. You light a single candle and hold the button in your palm. Not as proof, as promise. At the hearing, the men sit behind long tables, their voices low, measured, but their eyes are tight, narrowed. One of them calls your name. You step forward, no shoes, just your feet in worn socks, so they hear your steps, So they remember how you walked here on your own. They ask questions. You answer calmly, until one of them says, "But if your husband's dead, what does it matter now?" You don't raise your voice. You raise your son's drawing of the lantern, of the name carved beneath it. Then you say, "It matters because names don't die when people do. They die when you erase them." Silence follows, the kind that lingers. Heavy, the sheriff shifts. The pastor clears his throat. No one speaks. You leave the drawing on the table, turn, and walk out. The widow waiting at the door, your son in her arms, holding the lantern button like a coin from the afterlife. You don't look back. Because the truth? It doesn't need to argue, it just waits. And today it finally arrived. A week passes. No reply from the council, no knock at the door, no sheriff at the gate, just quiet. Almost too much of it. Like the town is holding its breath, waiting to see if you'll stay or vanish. You don't. You do the laundry. You sew patches into trousers. You teach your son the difference between silence and peace. At dusk you visit the shrine again, alone. The wind has shifted, blown away the pine needles. Kuan Yin's figure still stands, but the bowl has cracked down the center. You press your fingers to the stone, not to fix it, to remember where it split. You bring a new offering, a thread of red silk from your wedding robe, burned at the edge. Frayed where your son tugged it as a baby, you place it in the bowl. The crack cradles it, like it was meant to break for this. Back at the widow's house, your son's waiting. He holds a folded paper. "I made a book," he says. It's nothing, scribbles and shapes, circles for heads, lines for tears. But in the middle a picture, 3 figures, one holding a lantern, one holding a child, and one with no face. Just a heart drawn where the face should be. You ask, "Who is that?" He says, "That's the part we don't forget." Later, you return to the ledger. The widow sits across from you, tea steeping in silence. You open to the page with your name and add one more line beneath it. She stayed. Not a headline, not an accusation, just a fact. One written in a town where most people forget what truth sounds like. The next market day, no one mentions the hearing, but one man tips his hat. Another woman hands your son a dried apple. The pastor nods. Not warm, but not cold. It's enough. Not forgiveness, not yet, but room. And out here, room is what grows into roots. That night, you lay your son to sleep. He asks, "Will Papa ever come back?" You brush hair from his brow, say softly, "He already did." Through you. He doesn't answer, just breathes deep. And as he sleeps, you whisper the names again, yours, his, the ones buried, the ones saved, the ones yet to be written. Because you know now, there's no such thing as a forgotten name, only names that haven't been spoken loud enough. You wake before the sun, not because of noise, because of stillness, a kind you haven't felt since before the train, before the silence. Before your name became something you whispered only in dreams. Your son is still asleep, cheeks warm, thumb tucked beneath his chin. The widow left early to fetch water. The fires burned low, but the coals still breathe. You sit before them, wrap your shawl close, and reach for the ledger one last time. Not to add, to reread, to feel the names there, yours, his, hers, all woven now, not as wounds, but as witness. You don't need the town's apology. You don't need the sheriff to admit he was wrong. You don't even need the foreman to be punished. You've already rewritten the part of the story that mattered most. That you stayed, that your son knows, that a name once buried is now spoken aloud, on the porch, by the fire, in the hush of a bedtime whisper. You rise, light the lantern again, the one carved with "Never Forget." Its glow fills the corners of the room, gentle and golden. Your son stirs, opens one eye. Is it morning? You smile. It is now. Later, you take him out to the old shrine. This time he walks beside you. No need to carry. You let him place the new offering. A pebble he carved with your initials. He sets it beside Kuan Yin, then leans close, eyes wide. She still remembers, he says. You nod. So do we. The wind picks up, tugs your hair, but doesn't chill. It carries warmth, the kind left behind when truth is finally spoken, when stories are no longer whispered in the dark, but passed between hands, child to elder, sorrow to strength. As you head back down the trail, you glance once more at the lantern, still lit, still steady, still yours. And in that quiet flame, you hear not a voice, but a vow, that no woman's name here will vanish again, not while this fire still burns.